Started. It is 7:02. Thank you. Lisa, if you would please do roll call.
Susanna Lynn,
Here.
Shannon Hughes Brown,
Here.
Matt Winter, Ken Cleveland,
Here.
Ken Jackson,
Yep.
Heather Jacobs,
Here.
Blaze Messenger,
Here.
John Post,
Here.
Jessica Lamb. Should be coming. Oh, should be coming. Dr. Macri. Ms. Cochiola. Here. Selena Kelleher. Here. Then we've got, let's see here, Joe Costa. Joe Colada.
Here.
Mike Berger.
Here.
And I've got Jenny Palmieri. Lauren, yeah. Sorry. Oh, and Emily Fuentes. Okay.
Okay. Matt is going to show up. He's going to be a little late, so take note when he gets here. Agenda. Any changes or discussion on the agenda?
Nope. What's that?
If not, take a motion to approve the agenda.
So move.
Thank you, Ken. In a second.
Second.
Please, thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Agenda approved. Minutes, there are 2 minutes. We have our normal regular meeting minutes from the 19th, and we had our special meeting on the 26th, which was just an executive session. Take a quick look at the meeting minutes. We'll approve each separately. So starting with the October 19th one, are there any comments or changes anyone wants to make?
Did you have Matt call me this morning?
Yep.
I'm just gonna move Jack Hennigan, to town council,
Oh, yep.
and then, he would like the sentence on number 3, to take out. It said, Matt said he would like one town person should be on the committee, because first he suggested it, and then he withdrew his suggestion, so.
I'm sorry. What, the number 3?
Number 3.
Oh, on the design subcommittee discussion.
Oh, and is okay. Yep.
We're doing
Signs.
New business.
Yeah, it's in the middle of the paragraph, where it starts with, Rosanna said we do not, we do need a design subcommittee. He's the second to the last sentence, he just wants me to strike that out.
A one-town person should be on the committee. That line. Okay. Yep. So on page 1, 4. Yep. Remove the line that says Matt said one town person should be on the committee. Okay. Okay. Any other changes? If not, I'll take a motion to approve the minutes with those 2 changes as noted.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed say nay. The October 19th minutes are approved. The October 26th minutes, again, is just the special meeting with the exec session. I'll take a motion to approve the October 26th.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All
I will
opposed.
abstain.
Thank you. Ken's abstaining. All opposed say nay. 1 abstention. Those passes October 26th. Okay. Moving right along. Public comments. Anyone here for public comments? Any submissions?
Yeah, we received one email. Heather brought it to read.
Lisa, can you note that Matt's here, please?
So we had one email that came in today. It's from Jeff Oriel, who asked that we ensure that the drop-off loop is larger than the current loop. The current loop goes into traffic, making a standstill on Gear Street, which is not safe for kids crossing from Woodside Road. So he thought option 1B seemed like a better option. Also currently has no left turn from 7 to 9 a.m. that parents can't comprehend, creating other safety issues. And he also, in another email, asked for clarification on the iterations that with option 1A and 1B.
Sharon, can you mute your phone, please?
That mutes us. Hey, Sharon, can you hear us?
I did.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm unmuted.
Okay.
Sorry.
It looked like on the diagram with the arrow going from the around Watchers Park, the blue arrow has an arrow pointing towards Grove Road. So the perception from the public is that we are making that a through street through to Grove. So we just need to be clear on any iterations that we make like a stop so people understand that Grove is not going to
Yep.
become a school driveway.
And then there's no further social media or email comments.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you. Okay, as far as my update, I only have one update. So we had some discussions with the state regarding our grant submission. There was some minor, I'd call it administrative, little minor snag that we had to discuss. Nothing major, just some verbiage in the resolutions that the town made that just needs clarification. So we have the correct verbiage. We're going to provide, that was provided to us from Arcadis. We're going to provide that. We provided that to the town council, so they will be reading that in on their meeting next Wednesday, the 9th. So once we get that read in, we should be all clear and we can move on. That's all I had for updates. Quick and easy. So let's move right along to Perkins Eastman update.
We have introduction. Oh, thank you, Mike. We have an introduction. Lauren Giamendo, who's our project architect, joining us tonight. She was with us 2 weeks ago when we did the interviews with the teachers at the middle school and the staff. So we had a very good meeting with them. It was probably 12 or 13 groups of teachers and administrators, custodial staff. We missed the nurse because she had an emergency with one of the students. So we'll get back to her shortly and have a call with her or a meeting with her. We also got the survey in from the surveyors, so that's been distributed to the consultants. And we're getting the base drawings, existing condition drawings for this middle school drafted up this week, actually, in preparation of the demolition package for that. So that's the update on that. We can move on to the next slide.
Just go through the agenda where we're going.
Yep. So the full agenda, we're going to look at the selected building location, building configuration options, schedule update, and then the next step. So the selected building is the site selection that we picked last time.
That's it, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Site organization.
All right. Okay. Hello, everyone. I notice you're all cheating and flipping ahead in the handouts. I don't blame you. Yeah. So you see, we explored a number of different options that we'll walk through each of them. A few of them do look a little silly. I think we agree, but we wanted to put everything on the table just so we can answer the what ifs. What if this went here? What if that went there? And I think they're self-explanatory when you see them. I think we're leaning towards an option. I think that works fairly well. But before that, I think we'll kind of back up and review what we went over a couple weeks ago. Kind of that answer to your public comment, option 1B. And I think it solves a lot of the issues, and this is the solution that I think we kind of collectively landed on last time. There is still the question of access using the existing entrance. I know that's currently being studied now, seeing if sightlines can be mitigated.
Selena, there was we did do a traffic study for that entrance, right, a while ago, you were saying to me? The safe routes to school? Oh, that long ago, okay. But they,
Tom Daly?
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
you just, sorry.
Dave Sullivan, yeah.
I know you were talking about the entrance to the middle school, and about 8 years, I think it was about 8 years ago, there was a safe routes to school concept that we tried to move forward with, and there was an analysis done, I believe, by the Department of Transportation, but I don't have all of the information. I just recall them saying that it did not warrant a stop sign or a stop light or anything based on the traffic patterns. So I'm sure we can still look back into it, but that was
Okay.
my recollection.
Traffic's increased since then, I'll argue.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right,
faster.
thank you, sorry about that.
I see. I thought I recalled at our last meeting, though, there was somebody from, maybe Matt remembers, somebody was looking at that for us now, right, and doing a traffic study? Or maybe it was Mike Segan who mentioned that?
Yes, so SLR has
Okay.
a traffic consultant engineer that's on board, and they'll be looking at that, yes.
Okay, but that hasn't commenced yet.
They've started to look at it.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's why in all these schemes we have, an entrance option off of Watchers Park Road, but also the existing, entrance, whether it's an abandoned, it's emergency only, or if it's some mitigation takes place on the street to calm traffic, right? So we did talk about potentially using part of Watchers Road for parent drop off. The rest of the road potentially can be utilized for deliveries, trash and deliveries to the back of the school. I think the main takeaway was that after Joe Costa went through the escalation, the cost of construction, and how we really have to keep this budget under control, is if there are portions of the site that we can really minimize or actually not touch, like the existing baseball field and minimal improvements to the softball field, that's a big amount of money that can go into the building construction. So we're really looking for ways to do that. So that's why I think we landed on option 1B. And just as a refresher, there are 3 grades, grade 6, 7, and 8, and within each grade, the teaming structure, 2 teams within each grade, each have your 3 core classrooms, then a world language, 2 science, a prep room, a special ed resource room, and then down at the bottom you have these floaters. You have some intervention and some other classrooms. So what we're showing this here is in the plan in the first page of your book. This is really one of the main components. This is the typical academic neighborhood, and the single wing contains two groups, 2 teams rather, in an entire grade. You can see we're starting to look at the widths of the corridors, where we can locate lockers, your boys and girls toilets, your toilet room, a faculty toilet room, storage for that wing, 2 science classrooms, or even have electrical data closets kind of planned out there. So when we do an overall square footage check on these plans, they're pretty accurate. We have thicknesses of walls accounted for on this, exterior thicknesses of walls. Understanding the sensitivity of how large and or how small, how tight this building has to be, but we still love to carve out some pretty efficient collaboration spaces. We're thinking at the ends of corridors, we could picture a nice little window seat, overlooking the park, where kids can break out and pause, where they're not in the way of traffic, but it's a space that they can utilize. And all the time we're thinking of connections to the outdoors and outdoor learning opportunities. So this academic neighborhood diagram, you'll see it a lot in the plans. It kind of repeats itself in a similar fashion. So we just want to make sure that we have a good understanding of this. And I should mention, I spoke with Dr. Macri before this. Ideally, we'd love to review this in advance, with Dr. Macri and principal and educators. But for sake of time, these are hot off the press. We don't want to wait and let another couple weeks go by without reviewing it with you. So we'd love to review it with you guys after and talk in a little more detail. Okay.
Just quick questions.
Certainly.
The small T, is that an all-inclusive restroom?
It is. That's all inclusive. Yes.
And then, I know we're nowhere near designing, but
Mhm.
the, does the space as you have it laid out here, allow for like that concept of just an open entrance to the restrooms instead of doors?
It can, yes, yes.
all right.
Yes.
Okay.
So right here, that's that wall right there is,
Yeah.
is a visual blocker. So you have this little vestibule, open vestibule.
Okay.
So we could eliminate the doors, so you don't have the sight lines in there.
Okay.
So that whole, I know we started to have the
I
discussion
just
about
think
sounds
ahead,
and
'cause I'm
noises
like,
and
I-
smells.
Right,
Yeah,
because when
yeah.
you start talking about spacing and stuff, I just want to make sure we have enough space, you know.
Of course, yep. And there's a 5-foot distance between here and the inside wall, so someone in a wheelchair can turn around. So yeah, we're accounting for all
Thank
all those things. Yep. A good question. Yeah.
What do you think for this, the width of the hallways right now? What do you anticipate from locker to locker each side?
Yeah, right now I think we have 8 clear.
8 feet?
8 clear.
Okay.
Yep. And that'll come into play. There's a couple options in here where we have a full courtyard solution where students will be circulating around and through. Other grades will be circulating through. We might want to widen the corridor a little bit there because you'll have more traffic through there. But if this is just a grade coming in and out, especially for staggering lockers on either side, you don't really have the condition too often where you have 2 lockers on either side, kids getting their books, simultaneously, and kids traveling and teachers traveling down the corridor. So that's something we'll study, because that's, you take a foot out of that linearly and times 3, that really saves you a lot of square footage. So, yep. And also, this red dot here just indicates, a location where we can have a pair of doors, which are, on magnetic hold opens, so it could feel open most of the time. But if there's ever a condition or if noisy or anything, those doors can be locked down, or especially in evenings and weekend use, so you can secure off these kind of private spaces of the school when there's an event, like this, or something in the gym, an event in the gym or auditorium. These quiet parts of the school can be closed down and secured. Okay.
This upper left-hand corner is a stairwell, you're saying?
So this is a single-story academic neighborhood. So let me kind of jump ahead to concept A, maybe, and I think because that's really the basis, and they kind of vary depending on the layout, but generally that's what's included in a typical grade, right?
Yeah.
So concept A is what we, a progression of what we started with the interview when we first met. We think there's some really, some strong ideas in that concept, and this is an evolution of that. So we're really testing. I think we're fine-tuning the program, right-sizing everything. So this is to scale, and I think we'll spend a little more time on this, and I think the other options will go a little quicker because I think there's a lot of similarities, right? The main idea, we talked about that public and private diagram. So all these dark blue, which are kind of hard to read on the screen, you have your gymnasium up front, your auditorium in the center with your band and choral and music spaces tucked behind. And then at the top, you have your cafeteria, your food service, and then your custodial and mechanical spaces. We tucked the cafeteria up on the top of the page. It's north-facing. I think there's some great opportunities for some natural light. It's north-facing, so you don't get that blinding light and that heat gain in the space. Also deliveries, using Watrous Road and bringing the deliveries down around the back. Keeping the delivery vehicles out of the bus drive, the parent drop-off, and the parking areas, I think is a really smart idea. And also, and then the gymnasium. We see this space has the largest number of spectators and people that can get packed into that space. So it's going to have the largest egress requirements. So we want to have them empty out into the largest part of the corridor, which is right near the front door, because we're going to have to have a certain number of doors, a certain number of width at the front door to meet code and meet egress, right? And then the auditorium kind of tucked in the middle makes a lot of sense. Adjacent to that, you have your band and your choral, as I mentioned, and then you can utilize that corridor to sneak around the back of the stage and access the stage from both sides. All these little spaces in here are PE kind of support spaces, and you have your large toilet rooms for assemblies to support all those assembly spaces. And in the bottom right-hand corner is the Board of Ed, kind of the blob on the bottom right, which will be refined as we go. The next step is to start to look at those spaces, and I think that'll start to shape itself a little bit as well. And connecting the right-hand side and the left-hand side is what we're calling Main Street. So we see some natural light coming in from the top. We see this as a very active space. We understand the sensitivity. We don't want this large, grand space. We're being very efficient with the size of the corridor. And we're creating little spaces that increase the width in certain locations, but maintaining a very comfortable width. And again, like I mentioned, getting wider where we need it, really at the front door. Starting at the front doors, you have administration, so eyes on everyone. I think we'll have to go through your security protocol with that secure vestibule and how the arrival sequence happens. That's something we'll get into the next level. Any visitor coming into the school once school begins, what does that look like? But administration, guidance, nurse, right up front. And again, the next level of iteration, we'll start to develop that, and you start to see the smaller spaces within that big box. The yellow spaces are kind of really celebrating, the media center, the academic hub of the school is, smack dab in the middle. You see a great opportunity to connect to the outdoor space. It connects visually and physically to Main Street. Robotics, coding, they're not going to be boxes like this. These are kind of placeholders. We're going to design this space and how they integrate and how they work together, again, as the next step in development. And then art. So again, celebrating these special creative spaces, maker spaces, innovation spaces, and then art again with some great natural light at the top of the corridor. And again, great opportunities for display and kind of passive supervision and observation. We see some visual connections from the corridor into those spaces. And off of this public space, you start to enter your academic neighborhoods, and that's what we just looked at. So this is a 2-story concept, but the only portion of the 2-story really sits on top of this, right? So all of this that we're looking at here, this is 1 story, and then this portion right here, if you follow those lines down, will sit right on top of that. So it's a very limited portion that'll be a 2-story building. To answer your question, that's a stair located right in this corner, and then another stair located right here, and then an elevator right here. These are almost completely identical, with the exception that the wing on the top has 2 stairs. So this lends itself really nicely to possibly a 6th grade wing closest to the front door, 7th grade possibly on this level, and then 8th grade up on the top level. Again, these red dots indicate where we can have pairs of doors that can be secured in a security event, or if a portion of the building you just want to close down if it's not being used throughout the day, want to limit kids wandering down these hallways, or in evenings and weekends you can secure those doors, and people really only have access to Main Street and then just the spaces that are open off of Main Street. Any questions or comments on this one before I jump to this?
I got questions.
Oh, I'd hope.
So the angle that you have the academic wings veered off, is that for efficiency? Is that for space? Like what determined what that angle is going to be, or is that for aesthetics?
No, we're taking advantage of solar orientation, but also how the site works. We do want to create some, as I mentioned, the front door. That's a 2/3 kind of egress rule here in Connecticut, where you have to take 2/3 of these assembly spaces and bring them back out the front door. So inevitably, the corridors as you start to add these spaces together, the corridor does get wider towards the front door, so it has to open up. So people don't get packed in there like a stampede, unfortunately. And then you have a certain number of doors. So this is a first pass. We're going to have to do a calculation. By creating this, it creates some interest, right? There is a simplification. There are 2 grids. We're also very sensitive to, a pretty efficient structural grid. We understand how that, a simple, kind of straightforward structural design and structural grid will be a more efficient plan, right? So we have a nice clear grid, orthogonal grid on this side, and then there's a 10-degree shift on this side, and they only come together at Main Street. So it's a way of creating some spaces without getting too fancy. There's no curves, nothing like that. We've done this in a number of schools in a simple break-in plan like this, and creating just a little more elbow room and corridors and spaces. It's a really effective way of really space creating, space planning.
Okay, but the main driver is for that efficiency, because when you create that space, you're using up square footage at the same time. But you're saying
and you'll see we're pretty happy with where the square footage is coming on a first pass.
Okay.
This is a first pass, and there's a square foot number at the end.
Sure.
Are you saying that, Roseanne? I think what I hear is that the vestibule opening is they're going to make it no bigger than it needs to be.
Yep.
So, but if they kept that width consistent, then it would be inefficient, because he's saying
Oh,
like the tip
that's
of
how
it.
we're saying it?
Yeah,
Okay.
the tip doesn't need to be as wide as the
Yes.
base.
As the
So that's
base.
why they're being as efficient as
I see.
Yeah.
possible.
Okay, that makes a lot more.
We're
Thank
also,
you.
and there's also architecture to it. We're trying to create spaces.
Sure.
These are younger kids. They're not elementary, but they're maturing. So we're trying to prevent this kind of bowling alley effect. We're doing a lot to try to, from the previous version, we're trying to shorten the travel distances
Yep.
and trying to make it a more of a student-friendly scale.
Another question I have is, what's your experience with putting a gymnasium next to an administrative area, as far as soundproofing, and they're not gonna hear it, are they, when people start screaming in
As
that
long as they
room?
keep the doors closed. I mean, oh well, we can look at that. It depends on what space is directly across. So that's something we kind of want to talk about. Where do these big spaces want to go? This is our first pass, and we
Yeah.
think, as I mentioned, I think it makes some sense. But there's some sound mitigating things we can look at.
And then
Connecticut higher performance building standards have very stringent guidelines on acoustics and separation of different spaces and different types of spaces. So the wall assemblies will get pretty beefy between an office space and a gym, or even an office and a classroom. We'd get a much higher STC rating.
they weren't too strict in some schools.
Okay.
I'm thinking in the Middletown. Anyways, and then the last question I have is actually for Dr. Macri. And actually, Anne, maybe you can answer this too. So they say how they have the staff dining up there tucked in with the art room. Do you,
Yeah, I was curious about that.
do you think the teachers would actually utilize that space there if it's separate from the cafeteria and kind of separate from everything else?
It's now separate from the cafeteria.
Okay.
Make sure you use a mic.
Oh, use the mic, please. I'm sorry. I realize these are all very preliminary, but just
Sorry
I'd rather
about
have
that.
these conversations now before you get too far down the design.
No, this is fantastic. Yeah.
We currently, our staff room is next to the nurse's office, as you can all visualize that have walked
Yeah.
through there. So we're not next to the cafeteria now. So, it's not something, if anything, that is in more proximity to where you would have the cafeteria. There would definitely be staff that would go there to dine there.
Okay.
Yes, as long as that staff room is for them to eat. I don't want copy machines in there or, stuff. Keep that separate.
But do you
like
think a
workroom
singular
separate.
space like that would be more utilized as opposed to smaller spaces in each pod so teachers don't have to go that far to have their lunch and can just go into this area within their pod or
Well, some folks will just gather in smaller spaces, and others, we have a full staff room now. Our paraprofessionals will go in there and use that. Our substitutes. So yeah, and we also use it if we get together for a staff or put stuff in there.
Oh, okay.
Folks know
staff
to go to-
celebrations and things like that. Okay,
Yes.
that makes sense. All right.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that the space is going to be used. I don't.
I'd also add at Woodside, they put a staff dining room right adjacent to the kids' cafeteria, and no one ever used it because no one wants to go in there and hear kids screaming on their half-hour
Oh,
lunch
so
break.
it's even better. That's kind
So
of hidden
it's
away.
better
Got
that
it.
it's a little bit farther away.
I should
Yeah,
just ask you, Blaze.
yeah, it's used now for. I think the art room uses it or something. Teachers never went in there.
We wouldn't do that to you.
Well, it depends. When I taught, there was the staff room next to the caf because that's all we had, and we did use it. I think it's just, if you have it and that's the only place you go to, that's where you go.
But if
The
you can
Woodside
avoid the
one, you had to
craziness-
go through the cafeteria to get to it, which was also not optimal.
No. So having it tucked here behind the art room in a nice little quiet area is probably an actually good thing then.
Or maybe focusing on that, would there be any reason to bring it? Well, two questions, I guess. Maybe start with the dining. Yeah, would there be better to bring it towards that first wing, so proximity to the BOE and the admin office? I'm not sure if the BOE has their own lunch space, or would it make sense to have a
I think the BOE
Shared?
has their
Yeah,
own
this is
lunch
a
space.
strictly school
Yeah.
program
Wants
piece.
the Board of Ed in the school. He wants to eat lunch with me.
Oh, I keep saying Board of Ed. I mean, it's like central
Yeah, we
admins.
know.
Okay.
They're gonna have their own space.
Well, you guys
there.
can figure that out. But I just thought maybe bringing it towards that one would have more economies of scale.
And
but,
these
yeah.
are great discussions, and this is what we're hoping to get out of this. Even on a finer level, when you start to look at where does special ed resources room, where's your sensory room. So those are smaller details. Great questions, but obviously we're going to click through 5 more of these. We're hoping it'd be great if we come away with an option, a configuration that will later kind of fine tune. While we can have options for where the staff dining goes, et cetera.
I will say, I really do like having the nurse next to the gymnasium.
Yeah, right. Near the front door. Yep.
Yeah.
Near OTPT. near
Absolutely,
gym, yes.
the nurse to be right there in the front, so the kids have that direct access to leave, because I feel bad. The kids have to walk through the whole building to leave. So definitely that's where the nurse
And it's a good
needs to
distance
be.
away from the band room too, which is good. Yeah.
Some poor kid with a headache, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
do have a question on the main street.
Sure.
With kids heading, when you get a large group heading towards the front entranceway, with those jogs in there, do you foresee any type of, clogging up
Any
there in the
bottleneck? No,
hallway there?
we'll size that appropriately.
You
And
know
those
what I mean?
jogs are ideas, and we're thinking maybe display, maybe there's some translucency, maybe they get softened.
Yeah, you
So
can
these are
soften 'em,
boxes.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
But that
So
was
can-
my other. Oh,
Can I just add to that? The one thing that sticks out in my mind as soon as I looked at this was going back to the workshop that we had with the special ed. No corners. Kids hide in corners, and there's no corners. So that immediately caught my eye. Is like looking down there. There's 1, 2, 3 spots.
oh,
that
tuck points. You mean like
yeah,
kinda
like
tuck away?
But do we, I mean, when you say special ed, like where'd you get that feedback from?
from I forget her name.
Here?
Yeah,
Our
when we
school?
had our workshop on the 20th.
Okay.
She was because she actually referenced Woodside, and yes, and there were a couple spots in Woodside where she struggles with because they're points where kids can duck in and hide, and
Maybe we
she
could fill that
asked-
with like a display, like a kitty corner display.
Yes,
Exactly,
something just
exactly. Some
no
transparency
corners.
Yeah.
where you can see through it. Yeah.
Yeah, or that. Right. So.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. And we've had the same internal discussions when we were looking at this. So
My other
First
question.
thing.
no, it's great.
Is there like how to think about which wing has the 2 floors? Like, should it be the north wing or the south wing? Like, is there an efficiency reason, or was it just happenstance?
A couple of reasons. I mean, one of the main reasons is kind of solar exposure into this outdoor.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you
courtyard,
don't wanna
know,
block. Yeah.
Exactly. So you get more sun in there. Whether if science is going to use it, it's just a more welcoming space.
Because I was just thinking you have more throughput going to that north wing because you got 2 floors of classes versus the south one, but maybe
Yeah.
for the light,
Yeah.
that's why you picked it. Okay.
Exactly.
And then the last question I have is for these pods, you don't show doors leading into them, but I assume there will be doors to lock off those pods, right?
Exactly. So yep. So where these red dots are. Is
Oh, that's where the doors are go-
Those are
okay.
those are
Oh,
kind of
okay.
secure points, right? Yeah. Yeah. So
I
these
see.
diagrams
What's
will slowly morph into architectural plans. Yeah.
I hear you.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you for being patient with our questions.
No. These are great.
Oh, sorry, I didn't ask many.
Yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead. Please.
I just some clarification in the gym area or
Mm-hmm.
on what some of these acronyms are because I imagine they'll come up again like PE. I can't
Mm-hmm. Toilet and shower room. So that'll be
That's
the PE teachers,
like
toilet
the
and shower.
teachers.
Yep.
And then JC janitor closet,
Yep.
I'm guessing, and then T change, and then T those are all gender changing room, and then
Correct.
all gender toilet. Okay.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Perfect.
Sorry, I had to shorten them up so you can read them on.
And
a
then
plan.
just one other thought in looking at kind of the setup of the academic neighborhoods is I think when we're thinking about the collaboration spaces in the end, if that is a concept that we decide to pursue, currently based off of where doors are, it looks like really only like one teacher would be able to utilize that space because of, being able to keep eyes on it. And or if like a teacher or a para from like classroom 7 wanted to use it, they'd have a long way to walk. So just some things for us to keep in mind. I'm not saying yay or nay to it. Just want to
No,
put
understood.
it out on the record.
Great. We're trying to find that space, that lost space, and capture
I like
it
the
somehow.
hallway behind the stage.
Yeah.
That's smart.
Yeah.
The hallway behind the stage, I like that.
Yes.
Yeah, that's something that like
That's
a
great
couple
for,
of the community members
productions.
mentioned.
You can use the band room, the core room as green spaces.
Yeah,
in students.
that's
Yeah.
smart.
Okay.
Okay.
So the next page is showing how this footprint, concept A, fits on the site, and this is really, the approved, site configuration or building location that we discussed last week, just kind of modified with this footprint. What we did modify though is, and I think we'll continue to modify it, is the bus loop. Instead of circulating all the way around the soccer field in the previous option, we'd like to explore an option where the bus comes in, bus turns around and queues up along this north-south axis, and parents come in either off the existing road or off Watch Rose, drop, and then both parent loop and bus loop enter into the building. The arrow for the Board of Ed can be on this side. It can be on the opposite sides. It's separate identities. That's something that we can talk about as we move forward. But what we do like about this configuration with the bus is that you now have this kind of student and pedestrian zone between the building and all of the athletic fields, where you don't have to cross any traffic or any parking lots or any bus loops to get from the building to those athletic fields during a day, which is really nice. Be great to preserve some trees, kind of a nice grove of trees. Your cafeteria kind of sticks its head out on the north hand side, so you have great views. So we're setting the building up really nicely to take advantage of the fantastic site. We start to indicate with these dashed lines, the impact on those trees. Obviously, we'll take a look at the survey that we just received, and obviously have minimize the impact as much as possible. It's because we hate to cut down unnecessary trees, but also the budget, right? We want to minimize how much site work that we have to do. This little notch up here just indicates, we try to minimize and try to eliminate, modifying Watchhouse Road, to sneak by the softball field. But Mike Segan mentioned that last time as well. So as we continue to develop this, we see if we could pull the softball field a little bit farther south to minimize that impact. And as I mentioned, the service, so this white line would be service on the existing road and around to the back of the school, again, missing all the vehicular and the bus loop. Any comments on the site plan, or is it pretty self-explanatory?
Yeah, I think the only thing I have is for the vehicular loop, you're gonna go right over the existing sidewalk, and we're just gonna have to get the town to be okay with that.
I don't know if things could possibly change, but we did meet with, just because we were having problems during COVID with parents, everyone dropping their kids off. So we did talk to the chief of police, met with us about perhaps doing something similar to this, and they didn't want this opened up to, what is that? The back neighborhood. Would this possibly, like,
Oh, to Grove?
yeah, that's.
Oh,
close
yeah,
up.
no. And I think
Completely.
that was some questions from the public comment as well. So no, we're not suggesting any through traffic onto Grove. We,
Right, and so the white line is really just for service.
So the existing road, really does this right now, and
Yep.
then there's a gate that closes. So parents would only come up to a certain point. So that's why we're very curious to see if we can maintain this entrance, because this means more money out of the construction budget to improve this road, because it'd be much more traffic, heavily more trafficked, and also to cut through the woods and create this drive right here. This white line, we're suggesting that delivery vehicles or trash
Oh, okay.
vehicles only come into the site, drop off, pick up trash, then exit the same way out this way, and hoping to utilize the road as is.
Got it.
Right, so best, that wasn't my question, but that's okay. No, it's okay. My concern was the sidewalk that's down at the bottom of the vehicular loop. So you can see it kind of in this picture, you see this white, line
Oh, I
that
see
kind
what
of
you
curves
mean, yeah.
over. That's the sidewalk that exists today. They just put in that sidewalk, I don't know,
The sidewalk that ends, right?
the
sidewalk
the
that
sidewalk
ends,
to
like, right
nowhere.
at the- yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, are we clipping it with our?
Yeah,
Okay,
right there.
Yeah.
We'll nudge it up next
You
time
can
then.
see it. It's. I mean, ideally,
faint,
you'd want to
yeah.
be able to get rid of the sidewalk because it's pointless. It'd be good to get rid of it and put.
Well-
I mean, not the way it is. Right,
There's
this
a
right
thin white
That's a
line.
side-
That's the road line.
No, there's a
Yeah.
sidewalk that goes
No,
in.
because there's little arrows here, see?
No, but there is a sidewalk.
Yeah, there is here, it's further down.
It's right there. It's against the grass line.
So this construction site is gonna get destroyed, and that sidewalk is gonna get destroyed with it.
I know, but I heard
So we're
early
talking
on where
about
they.
$1,000.
No, but I heard early on someone mentioned that they wanted to keep that sidewalk intact, and I just want to make sure that
Yeah,
the town
good-
realizes that's not going to happen.
Yeah, good luck. It's gonna get destroyed.
Okay.
Yeah, there'll be a sidewalk there,
Yeah.
but it's gonna get mangled during construction.
Yeah.
And I think we talked about this last week or last meeting too, was obviously if we can avoid, doing all the work to Watchers Park Road and adding that extra road,
Exactly.
it would be ideal
It-
for budget purposes.
Correct. And that's why we're showing both right now until
Yep.
we have all
So-
the information, right? And I think the solution works, with or without either option entering the site.
Yeah.
You have plenty of queuing. And again, this is a placeholder. Mike Segan and his team in the civil will fully design this. So we'll take a look at the sidewalk and the configuration now, which kind of led towards the existing school. How did walkers and pedestrians enter the site now and enter the school is something that will have to be.
Where does
Study.
service come in now?
Comes right through parent pickup.
It goes right through the
We gotta
parking lot.
sometimes go out there and go. stop the cars so the milk truck.
I had to move a cone for one once.
I think it's good to, yeah. Well, it's good to have the service for that reason, but weren't you saying that's where you're going to have to blaze kind of a road there anyways for construction purposes?
They're gonna use, oh yeah, for
So
at
the
top.
white dotted line is
Yes.
going to kind of
That's
be
gonna happen no
existent
matter what,
anyways.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
So
that's
it's good
gonna
to
be a
keep using it for
singular-
service.
Yeah,
That'll
and
be
you're,
like a
and you're
singular
close to the
road
road
though.
up here, whether
Yeah.
it does this or follows, yeah, exactly. Yep.
Is this? Are we? I know we're possibly infringing on that road, but because the size of that parking, that square blue box parking, is that to try to achieve some number of parking spaces?
Yes.
If that's
yes.
flexible, maybe
And trying to lengthen the queue, correct?
Yeah. But the length
Yeah.
in the queuing, I mean, that Watrous Park Road or Herbert Porter, you might hear it referred to as Herbert Porter Drive too.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Or Herbert, yeah. I mean that's significantly longer.
Yep.
Like that, and then the line across is probably longer than the existing queue
Yes.
Right,
today,
but,
right?
If-
but
if
the
we come
cost
off
it would
Gear
take,
Street.
we'd have to go and widen that road, and then we have to go and take a double wide road.
No, what they were saying, they elongated the box on the bottom to accentuate as much queuing as possible.
No, I'm saying for us to use this pathway, we'd have to go create this whole road, and then we'd have to widen this road, so it's gonna add a lot of cost to our budget.
But I think Matt.
Yeah, I'm
What-
saying, but
what
if
Matt's
that
saying,
is
though-
the way that's being gone, I don't know that we have to have this giant box. I think it can be a tighter loop, is what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
we would only need that
If you
giant
do
box
the-
if we go off Gear Street.
Yeah.
Right.
That was my.
Well,
yeah.
even if we go off Gear Street, you're not using the entire box, you're not gonna go up, it's 3/4 of it.
I was just saying we can maybe shove the building,
shift it
bring-
down to
bring the
minimize the
building down
impact.
south and not have to disturb the
Yep.
the white bump in the road there.
Up Oh, yeah, here?
way
well-
up there, the bump
Oh,
that the
yeah,
softball
yeah,
field
yeah.
would create to have to move the road.
Yeah, Matt, we'll
Yeah.
we'll
But
definitely look
that's-
at that, and anything that we can avoid touching, and make the building and the drop off work.
And then
we'll study.
maybe an alternative one would be if you make that Gear Street just a one-way entrance with an exit out Watrous Road.
Yep.
You know.
Yep,
so
and that's
maybe
something we discussed as well too. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Left-hand turn out of.
No, it's better at a Watrous though. There's more sight.
That's what. Yeah.
Right, out of Watrous, so I'm saying if you entered at the existing entrance.
Oh, you're still taking a left
Still have to take a left
into the entrance.
to that hill, yeah.
Oh, I thought the left hand was the more the concern leaving that
It's,
driveway.
when you leave that,
Mhm.
is when you can't take a left
right
turn.
when you leave
Right.
there.
Yeah, Matt, it's a
Yeah.
little bit of both.
It's a little bit of both, yeah, we
Yes.
talked about last time, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And parents today line up on that Watches Park Road at pickup and use it, and they take left turns.
Is that sidewalk to nowhere, does that get a lot of walkers is that what that's for? Is that why that was built?
I think they had extra money in that.
Okay, so it doesn't really even get used in the morning for kids to walk to school or anything?
No, anybody, almost all the walkers come up
I-
From that neighborhood
from
to
the,
the,
from
to
the Board
the,
of Education.
from
Oh,
that side, okay.
Through here.
I mean, having another pandemic aside, I mean, I dropped my kid off at WIS at 8:24, and there's 7 cars in line, and that's it.
Isn't the whole nice the way we can.
No, what I mean is like there are only 7 cars in front at any given time in front of WIS at like 8:24. Maybe at 8:19 there's like a pretty long queue, but by 8:24
It's usually pickup.
It's dissipated. It's gone. I don't know. Maybe pickup is
what makes the
Ah.
demand because
Yeah.
everybody gets there for the same time.
Oh, okay.
Versus drop off where it's staggered over a half hour or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, moving right along.
Okay, moving right along. Okay, so that's concept A.
Oh my gosh.
B, this will go a lot quicker now. We wanted to look at what happens if we mirror the plan. So the way that the school functions is really identical. It's really how it meets the site is the difference. And we kind of have there's some pros and cons of each one, but the idea is still. And so the Board of Ed now flips from the east over to the west-hand side. Again, that 2-story piece is still across the back, but now we're tucking all these public spaces kind of up towards the woods. And what we're doing is we're bringing kind of the quiet spaces, the private spaces, kind of deep into the center of the site. We still do love the idea of these academic fingers kind of nestling up against the woods. You still have the appropriate solar orientation for the classrooms running in east and west across the site. There's still an impact upon here. I think the only way this one would be successful is if we do make that cut through Watrous Park. I think it does some nice things for the Board of Ed. It kind of puts them on the fringe, on the edge of the campus, really. So you don't feel like you have to travel deep into the campus to get to the Board of Education. You can have your own central office. You can have your own parking and really own identity here. There's some opportunities. I know we have to have the discussion about arrival and discharge, whether it's preferred, one entrance. Buses and parents, everyone comes to the front door. But there are also some opportunities on this. If the bus loop elongates, possibly, if it's supervised, you can enter directly into those academic wings for the buses, and then parents, you can enter into the front door to alleviate some of that load and the craziness at the front door. So that's something we can discuss. Still some great opportunities for some outdoor learning. What happens on this one is that the service area and the kitchen kind of flip from this side over to this side, which is nice. So you kind of shorten that service drive and really keep all the service vehicles over here. So this whole area over here really becomes kind of a car-free zone. I think you will have an emergency, road loop that runs around the school, but no vehicles on it.
So yeah, car-free zone is the problem though, because some of the comments we get from the community, especially when we're talking about the common spaces, is that they want quick and easy access to the auditorium from the parking lots. And right now, you're going to have to walk all the way down.
Yep. Yeah, so you would enter, your front door, and it's very similar to the previous option. Be entering right through the main door. Then you have your gym and your auditorium. Probably your two most utilized spaces are the closest towards the front door.
Oh, I see. I guess it's the same thing.
It really kind of is a similar situation.
You're right.
So, obviously the same square footage, same efficiency, and we can look at the same things, kind of pulling this one down to really minimize any impact on the existing road. I'll keep going. Concept C is a little bit different. We heard a comment a couple weeks ago, fingers versus an enclosed courtyard. So we wanted to explore this one and see what this meant. So it still works pretty nicely, and you see the square footage. It's very, very similar. I think it's a little bit larger in square footage because you're adding a little bit more circulation to get around the corner here. But this still does work out very nicely. What we did is we took the science classrooms, rotated them 90 degrees around the corner on these two wings, so you can still have 6th grade, 7th grade. We're toying around with bringing the art room and really kind of activating this with a specialty space. I think it'd be a fantastic room, overlooking the woods and then overlooking through into the courtyard. So you have specialty spaces over here, and then a specialty space over here. Then you can have your 7th grade, and then again 8th grade upstairs with 2 teams upstairs. Everything else, staff dining is still adjacent to your CAF, but you're not physically touching it. There's a corridor in between. Board of Ed still lives in this corner. Here, there's some pros and cons about an enclosed courtyard. We typically propose them for even younger students for elementary schools, so you can have that really secure outdoor play where kids can go out there and you're not going to have any runners. You don't have to worry about anyone coming in. There will obviously be some security mitigation along the perimeter of the site. Mike Segan's not here tonight, but he can talk more about fencing and cameras, obviously around the edge of the site. There's also the maintenance concern, bringing lawnmowers and stuff out, depending on what grows out there. You have to bring them through the school, through vestibules and more doors into this space for any kind of landscaping and upkeep.
And instead of like a greenery type of courtyard, could you do like an amphitheater out there?
Of course, and we've done that multiple times where it's a combination of spaces.
Because that would resolve the issue we were talking about before about security of having the outdoor learning center, and it's in the middle of the building.
But if it's in the middle, it can't be, you couldn't use it for public stuff if you want to lock.
It'd be a learning area, like a classroom, outdoor classroom type of thing.
The only thing with that is it distracts everybody.
Oh, they'll all be looking at.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
They'll be like,
Yep.
Yeah.
which is why we don't use it.
Yeah, you might see it. The writing is really small. Hopefully, it's legible in your handout. We're suggesting maybe outdoor performance space off of your cafeteria. I know that Ed Spec did mention double-sided stage, which we've done many times. But the efficiency and the way that the auditorium stage and your band and chorus with that back corridor, we see that as very beneficial for 90% of the time. For educational use, and just the way that it flows. For the outdoor space, I think we can do create a fantastic space off of the cafeteria. Again, away from the majority of the classrooms for any of that acoustic disruption when it's in use.
And that could also be used for outdoor dining if we wanted to give
Absolutely.
outdoor
Absolutely.
lunches. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep.
As a prize.
Yeah, there you go. You got to earn it. Yeah. How this fits on the site, very similar to A and B. The only thing is the building does get a little bit longer to the west. Obviously, when we close this off, so you're eating into the woods just a little bit more. Everything else could function exactly how A and B function, or A really. So that's the end of the two-story scheme. So 3 options. You have the fingers, the original kind of fingers idea. You have the mirrored fingers or the classroom academic fingers face to the east, and then we have a courtyard option. The next 3 are, we discussed it briefly last time. I think everyone agrees that the real estate on the site is very valuable, and the cost. And also, travel distances within a school. I think having a very limited footprint of a 2-story wing on the school was most likely preferable for operational standpoint in the way that site works. But we wanted to put it out there so we can hopefully move on, right? So the first one looks a little silly. What we're doing is really taking that second level classrooms here, and first question is where can it go? Everything else in the building is kind of starting to fall into place. So without really starting over and rehashing it, where can we plug in? This is an easy solution. Obviously, there's some travel distance issues, kind of sense of community, but it does plug into Main Street eventually. Everything else works very similarly. The challenge comes into phasing. Obviously, very faint. You can see the outline of the existing school right here, so we do have to miss that. We can't push it any farther north because the scheme, we're really trying to preserve and maintain the fields, so we don't have to rebuild those and pay for those. So what that does, it really pushes the building way into the woods.
Swipe left.
Yes, thank you. Done. We explored it. Thought that one was silly. Look at this one. So this one, we took it, kept the nice, comfortable. It's between 60 and 70 feet between in this courtyard space, which is a comfortable, usable size for any outdoor learning, and keeps kids far enough away. There can be a nice buffer between the outdoor learning and those academic in the windows to minimize the disruption. So this really blows the efficiency of the building away. Creates an incredibly long, almost 400-foot long corridor here. Very similar in length to the pre-referendum building, which we again, we're trying to really shorten that travel distance.
Swipe left.
Yeah, and what that does really impacts your road. The next one, the last option, for a single-story building, we think this is probably the most viable if we're going to look at a single-story building. Some cons to this one is that we're creating these academic neighborhoods where kids can really have a sense of their grade and their team. And other grades, older kids aren't traveling through on a regular basis. Where you do mix with the other grades and the other schemes is really on Main Street in your specialty spaces. What happens with this, if say this is 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, now these 8th graders are constantly traveling through these neighborhoods. And your question, Ken, about the width, the width of the corridors, this is a scheme where we'd probably look at increasing the width of those corridors, making it less efficient. To allow for the number of students to travel back and forth through these neighborhoods to get to the spaces.
This reminds me too much of what we have today.
Yeah, and travel distance. So thank you. We feel
Moving right along.
we feel the same on these.
That's fine.
We're glad we looked at it. So if in case a question comes up later on, we explored it. It didn't make sense, right? And if it's okay on site, it just gets a little bit too large. So the last couple slides, what we want to point to, that Joe Costa went through this last meeting. What we want to kind of focus on is this is the school square foot number, and this is the outside. So this is everything from brick or whatever facade material we have all the way in. So that's and we're anticipating about a 1.4 multiplier, which is very typical for an efficient modern school, and that includes those little spaces in the corridor, which a little bit of elbow room, which you need. So that's our target number, and these diagrams, again, we mentioned they're to scale. They account for interior thickness of walls, exterior thickness of walls, and for a first check, we're pretty darn close, which is really encouraging. That number will fluctuate a little bit as we're going, but the fact that we're really close to that target number is great. Means that we don't have those large wasted spaces in the hallways. as mechanical and we start to onboard our consultants mechanically, and they start to right size some of those data rooms, and we start looking at bringing that shafts down through the second floor to get to the first floor, that kind of stuff. And we really fine tune how thick the exterior wall is, the materials. So there's some variables that will make that number, fluctuate up and down a little bit. But the fact that we're close right now is great. And what we do want to point out is, depending, really, any of these options, we're pretty close. Even with a single-story building, a single-story building, I know we don't want to do, but you're not building 2 stairs or an elevator. But I think there's a lot of cons to how the school functions, right? So with that, is there any consensus of we can probably delete the bottom line, but on the 2-story building, A, B, and C, A and B are the same plan, just again mirrored in how they meet up with the site, and then option C again is a 2-story building. But we're wrapping those science wings or science classrooms around the corner to create that enclosed courtyard.
So I have a few comments. So the single-story options and maybe even the courtyard one, I think envelope-wise, we're not going to be able to afford. It's going to be too much envelope for all of those options. A and B, I prefer A. I think that's basically where we were at our last meeting.
Yes.
I like Main Street and that you have the specials off of Main Street. I think it's all organized well. I'm curious to see what I don't like about it. It's a long corridor with not a lot of light, so I'm curious to see how you'll get some natural light into that corridor.
Yes.
The classroom wings. One of the things that I think what sold me on your interview was the way the corridors kinked out at the end and created a space.
Yes.
These feel a little generic, but we're still in a generic mode here.
Yeah.
So I would challenge you to look at shaping those corridors a little bit more so they don't look like a bowling alley.
Great. That's a great comment. We actually started with that. We're trying to get as efficient plan as we can to make sure we're close at target, and we're happy with it. We also heard comments before about that wasted space, so we're kind of fighting both things. So now that we know that we're close, we're right on, to that square foot number, we'll see if we can create, play around with a couple options.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for the comments.
Instead of the long hallway option, did you consider maybe more of a square, 2 square ends as opposed to 2 elongated ends? Because that center space, I know it's nice to have the outdoor learning in the middle. I just don't know if it's going to be utilized for the same reasons that they were talking about distracting other classes. So if there's a way to utilize that space, I don't know. It's just a thought. Is there...
I
Does
think
that
I know
do
what
any-
you, I think I know what you mean, but I don't know how to
Yeah,
put it into
2 square
articulate it.
pods as opposed to 2...
A long hallway.
iPods. Shaped pods. Eye-shaped pods.
Yeah.
I think if we were to have 2 square-shaped pods, we're going to end up paying for a lot of corridor. And we may not get as much natural light into those classrooms as we think. You may get some landlocked rooms.
Yeah. And those corridors, and I guess the scale is maybe difficult to tell on these. And these corridors, we're doing our best to really minimize the length, the perceived length of these. And we want to avoid, bowling alley lengths. Ken, your comment is great about the natural light. And I might have mentioned, or maybe I forgot, we're looking at bringing some natural light from the top. There's always kind of light at the end of the tunnel, so you're looking down the corridor, you see that. We do have these specials now, right in the middle, and we see a lot of transparency from the corridor through that. So you are getting a lot of natural light. That's definitely a main goal of ours as well. But also within these pods, only 150 feet or so. I think each classroom is about 24 feet wide, if I'm doing the math right. And there's little moments along that corridor. The last thing we want to do is create a scaleless bowling alley effect. And as we design this, we'll look at 3D and we'll walk you through it and really experience the space in true scale and feel. So.
Do you know how the length of the academic neighborhoods, that hallway, compares to the current hallways?
I do not. Unfortunately, haven't spent much time analyzing the
Yeah.
existing school.
I'm just
Oh,
looking for like a point of
That's
reference.
probably similar, I would imagine.
These look long.
How many classes long is one
Well,
corridor?
it go from my class to the end to the 7th grade hallway. It's, I think, 6 classrooms. But the orientation of my classroom is not this way, it's this way. So it's longer than this would be simply
Oh,
because
gotcha. Yep.
because the orientation of the it's wider
Because your class is
wider than it
wide
is
and not
right,
deep,
and they're
yeah.
all of them are that way. So this would be shorter, and I start about halfway down the corridor because we have all the. There's like on the other side, there's like 10 classrooms in a row.
And I guess if you're looking at it compared in scale to, say, the auditorium and stage, it's really just 2 auditoriums put together, which is not bad. If you think of it that way.
The very very first page, I put a 3-foot door in there for scale. I think that helps to understand that it's a comfortable length, and like I said, it's Ken's comment about bringing back that slight angle and creating and shaping that space a little bit so it opens up and brings some more light in is a great one.
I agree with Ken. I'm not a fan of that interior corridor in option C.
Oh, yeah.
Question.
Courtyard, yep.
Yeah. Question on A though, with that service road coming between the school and the softball. Does that have any impact if those fields are being utilized for gym?
Well, I guess it depends on the schedule of the deliveries and trash. So yeah, that's something it's a good question. I think that road would also double as an emergency vehicle access road as well. But you'll never get cars on the road. People are not allowed to drive on that. So
Right.
it's scheduled deliveries and trash.
And right now, the trash does go across there onto the field.
It
Crosses,
does
yes,
now?
it does.
Okay.
But they come twice a week, and they're there for 10 minutes. So it's not, so it's not a huge impact.
It also looks like, based on the floor plan we have, if you're in the gymnasium, you're going to exit to go to the fields between the band and the mechanical room.
Exactly.
So if you exit out that way, you're going to avoid that road.
That's true.
Yep.
I think, Ken, I'm with you. I prefer A over B. I like the idea of the gymnasium closer to the fields. It just feels more like you have more parking options, more accessibility to those common areas. It feels that way. Maybe it doesn't realistically how it actually lays out, but and I like the fact that the academic wings are into the woods because it feels like a little security blanket, kind of.
Yeah, I
right?
think it would have a calming effect.
Yeah, a calming effect.
Into
You have
the
something
woods.
nice to look at instead of a parking lot.
Sorry, I'm singing the song. No, but I agree. I think I know you won't have trees right up against the windows, but I still think it's a more calming environment, and anything we can do to calm the environment would be a plus.
I also think having the Board of Ed with eyes on bus loops, parent, and just kind of forward facing adds another layer of security rather than having them kind of tucked back where in B there's very minimal line of sight
Yeah.
for them.
I agree.
The other thing here I see is when Mike kinks those corridors, you might be able to shorten the building. You might be able to move a classroom from one side to the other.
Sure. Yeah.
And then we'd have less impact on the woods.
Yeah, we're going to continuously try to find efficiencies,
Yeah.
and tighten this building up as much as we can as we go.
Do you need us to agree on which option moving forward?
Just like last week. I mean, it sounds like this, and we assumed this. We wanted to explore all the options, just to make sure you guys are comfortable and feel comfortable that we explored, most options and made the right decision. We do have to, looking at Joe's going to talk about the schedule, but we're in schematics now. We have a couple months to really develop in Crank. Lauren's starting to work on it. We have a team ready to go and start developing this. We have to onboard our consultants, so that there's a lot of work to go, a lot of work to do, rather.
I mean, I'd like to move away
So,
from this concept and start moving towards
Yeah.
putting more.
Yep.
Right, and
Details.
there'll be little projects within the project, within the diagram, so.
Right,
there's gonna
right,
be
right.
a lot more development
Yeah.
in the next 2 months.
Absolutely.
Start looking at it in 3D and yeah.
This is the fun part, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How, yeah, I think there's both the schematic for like what the building itself looks like, and then just that exterior site, and how the parking and the traffic flow shapes up.
Exactly. This is the most important, one of the most important decisions, though. From here forward, we don't want to turn back and change our mind about which way the building's flipped or which way it's going. If it's a 1 or 2 story, building. So we don't want to rush it. We want to make sure you guys are comfortable making this decision. But it sounds like.
Right, but at this point, we're deciding on the layout of A, but with some open questions maybe still about the entry points and the vehicle
absolutely.
points and the
This is
parking.
very
Those
early
finer-
in the design, and Ken knows
Okay.
this is very early in design.
Yeah.
Boxes can move within there. We can play with angles. Board of Ed can take a different shape. Absolutely, yeah.
A month from now, it's going to look drastically different.
Well, hopefully not drastically. Come on.
Well, it will.
Well, at some point, we'll just want to know whether, it's in scope to use Watrous either as a 1 or 2 way vehicle traffic, and whether it does need to be, widened or improved and trafficked and all that stuff.
Exactly, and this option, most of these options work. I think this option works really well with either, right? If the existing entrance can work, you do have a ton of queuing space around this, right?
Yeah.
So.
So Jessica's here now. Can we go through that all over again?
Yeah.
So
Hello.
I'm 100% comfortable with option A.
I me
Curious
too.
what everybody else thinks.
Is anyone in disagreement with that? Anyone want to discuss?
I'm not necessarily in disagreement, but not ready to. I'm still processing.
You have a comment, Mayor? Can you use the microphone, please, so we can,
use this
there.
one.
Anywhere you see an open mic, just have a seat. Take a seat at the table. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. So you're talking about having 2 stories on the northern wing. Would the southern wing, would that be capable of supporting a second story, like 15 years down the road, you can put a second story on it, add another wing of classrooms?
Potentially, the impact and disruption to the students and the way the school functions would be problematic. What we are suggesting, and what we suggested early on, I mean, it's a great question. Should have mentioned it. We suggested if we want to add classrooms, you can add on to the ends of these corridors.
All right, so it's at least been thought of as as a something.
Yeah.
I understand. You're
It's much
trying
easier to build next to versus on top
no,
of,
I
especially an
understand.
occupied building.
So that's
yeah.
different than what we talked about previously, because previously we were told that you could build the second floor on top of the other wing if we needed to.
I mean, anything can be done.
You can, but it's going to be cost prohibitive.
Yeah.
I would suggest if we were going to think about future expansion, look at concept D. They've got that extra finger that goes out towards the east.
Oh, add the finger and later on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or F, right? Or just F, close it.
Or just add the.
Yeah, no, I thought, I thought at least structurally. How many L's I put in that word? From a structure standpoint,
Say
you're
that
saying
again.
it can be capable to support. It's not like you're going to say, oh, shoot, we need to rebuild the first floor, but you're saying it would both maybe be disruptive and degrade the light into the courtyard, and for all those reasons.
Correct.
Not
If it's something you guys
own-
knew
yeah.
it was going to happen in a number of years, there's something we can design and plan for. Structure can look at it, mechanical, everything can plan for future expansion. Up on the
Okay.
second floor.
That would
Alright.
probably add a lot of cost to the project, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're ripping off an entire roof. It's the schedule of it. I mean, obviously, probably wouldn't get done in the summer. So you'd have an occupied school.
No, I
with-
mean,
with
like,
construction.
Now.
the preparation for future, I'm saying, would add a lot of cost, not to add this.
Yeah.
Right, you have
Yeah,
to
it's more.
beef up the foundations,
Yeah.
the
Right.
structure.
Yeah. So you're,
Right, right,
you're
right.
paying for a lot of stuff that's kind of
Okay.
redundant. You don't need it at this moment. No.
Okay. So I guess we'll need to know, hey, when we built it, and then this was our plan for possible expansion.
Yeah.
And if that did not include adding it on top, we don't have to figure out where it would go. Just it would be on top.
You have options.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then again, if we're adding another floor or whatever in the future, it'd be like high school. So. Make it a courtyard. Yeah, closing the courtyard. It's probably
You
the-
also run into the complications of 15, 20 years out of code changes over
Okay.
the evolution of the
Yeah.
20 years.
Yes.
I've seen it happen in other districts. They planned 20 years ago for an expansion, and the codes had changed so much with means of egress
Yes.
and seismic and everything else that it became cost prohibitive to try to meet the current codes
Exactly.
by putting an addition on. So it's you can plan for it, but
Yeah,
best
no.
laid plans, it usually doesn't work.
Good point.
Okay. Any other discussion on these options? Anyone uncomfortable with option A?
No, but maybe not. Just a question. We talked about the timeline. We talked about the schematic and exactly what's the timeline? Was it end of December, beginning of December? We were trying to have some better plans so that an estimator could.
What's the next big
Yeah,
major
yeah.
milestone?
Let's get there.
Yeah, so the next milestone would be right before Christmas would be our schematic design set and narratives and package that would get estimated. So we're looking about 8 weeks from now, 7-8 weeks. And then we'd move into design development after the new year, which would be about another 8-week phase. And then followed by that would be the construction documents.
So the completion of the schematic is about 8 weeks out.
About 7 weeks
Or
out,
7
yeah.
weeks out, okay.
So the schematic design, and maybe you can help. Schematic design is basically like the drawing, like your architectural drawing, but doesn't include all the, like, plumbing and electricity and all that stuff,
It would
right?
be, yeah, it would be
Like
plans, elevations, basic building sections, typical wall sections.
Right, it's what we would see, like,
Right.
if we're walking through.
And then all the MEP, technology, security, that would all be in narratives.
Okay.
We'll provide a basic.
And that comes after December.
No, that would be in this
Oh, that's
package.
still part of that.
Yes, it's
Okay.
all part of this package, yeah.
So what comes after this package? Like, what would be further developed?
So that would be, the next phase is called design development, where we start showing more details. You'd get more drawings from the consultants, laying out the mechanical systems and
Okay.
and basic layout. We
And
start to
that's-
look at
that's
if
we
we could
start
fit
filling in
everything in the
spaces.
building.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
And then construction documents is really documenting everything for the construction. You get a lot more details, a lot more schedules, and more of the nitty gritty
Okay.
of that. Yeah.
Very good.
But sorry, so the next estimate we'll get is based on the schematic, and you think that estimate will take 8 weeks to complete from the end of the year, or
This schematic estimate probably be 2 or 3 weeks. I'm not sure what we have in the contract with the estimator. To
So in
see
the
how-
January.
It'd be probably, I would say, mid-January at the latest.
All right, thanks.
So schematic design estimates, they'll be probably square foot estimates,
Correct.
more or less. Once we get into DD and
Oh.
when we get through construction documents, then we'll have a line by line estimate that's much more detailed. So what you'll end up seeing after SD in the estimate, it won't be dissimilar from the one that Tecton and
That's what I was asking.
Correct.
Okay, so
And
it'll be that
CSG
level
prepared.
of specificity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
the design development estimate's really the most critical one. It's that's the real check of where we will we be before we go into construction documents.
But pre-referendum, we didn't get that far. We only got to like this point in our design process, just the concepts, right? So
Mhm.
they did all their estimating off a concept, not off of a schematic design.
Yeah, but they had the ed spec has a significant amount of information, and these estimators are estimating schools every day, so they're using their best judgment on what we likely have for materials on interior and exterior. There was a good sense of where we had glazing, so it was a per square foot estimate, but I think it was pretty thorough.
So what I'm saying is, do we have to wait till the end of schematic design to do another estimate?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Thank you.
So next steps, we'll go back and meet with the educators and Dr. Macri to review this plan and further drill down on adjacencies and make sure we have everything in the right spot and make adjustments based on the meetings that we had a couple weeks ago. We'll have the consultant team kick off SD. That we'll be doing that next week. Get them on board and fully going. There's a large team of that. There's MEP, there's structure, site civil's already going, landscape architect. Who else am I missing? Did I say food service? There's a large team. And then we'll be looking to do community outreach, which will be more of a progress update of where we are and what the plans are starting to look at, and be more of an informational session versus a charrette working session,
Okay.
like we've been having with the educators. I think that's it.
Is that it?
When would you suggest that community outreach take place?
Oh, what do you think, Mike? Probably.
Probably closer towards the end of schematic. So we have a plan, a building, and we make sure the building is in place. There's a site plan is started, so you can start to understand. These are really block diagrams, so
Yeah.
Mike Sieg and his team can work on it.
Okay.
Where everyone's comfortable that this is what the building's going to look like. So we can get back to you. Probably closer towards the end of schematic. I would venture to guess.
Right, and then in the next week or two, Mike will be starting to develop the massing and
Yeah.
the materials and what it's actually going to look like, and develop that diagram further.
That's fun.
So,
Are we ready to vote on what building option we want? If we are, I'll take a motion. They need a building option selection.
I mean, I'm only freezing up because I wasn't sure if, like, the design subcommittee would want to have a proposal first, or no, we just.
I mean,
I don't really. I don't
and-
really care. I'm just curious.
for the sake of time,
No, I think this should be a full committee. I don't
Yeah.
think it should
Yeah.
be design committee at all.
okay.
Yeah, I just thought, like, propose an option. We would still vote on it, like we said, because it's a big decision. But yeah.
No, I say
No need to.
no, full committee.
So if it feels like I heard positive comments for option A. Is there any discussion? If not, I'll take a motion.
Sure, I'll make the motion to vote on concept A.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any other further discussion? All those in favor of option A, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay.
Nay.
Anyone abstaining? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. All right. Thank you. Next on the agenda is Arcadis. Emily, I'm sorry, thank you, just so we can get that on the, there you go, thanks.
So I am here on behalf of Jack, who's on vacation, as everybody knows. As Rosanna mentioned earlier, there was a meeting held with OSCGR last Friday with Michelle Dixon. The approval for the recommendation has gone through. We did forward that language to Michelle, but have not heard back from her on either yes or no.
Okay.
Based on my experience, sometimes that's a good thing. So to hear something quickly, then it's like she has an objection to it, but not hearing, it's actually good. We are here to just provide a status update on the budget. The budget on the left-hand side, which you will see, is what was approved at the October 19th meeting and has been shared with town finance. So we are, I think we are all on the same page with regards to the budget. As you will see on your right-hand side, total paid to date has been $29,001. That has not changed. As you know, the financial process for approving invoices was tabled last month, so no invoices have yet been presented. Today, we have encumbered $2,917,920 and leaves us a project balance of $53,015,797. Items to note is that moving forward, you will see an additional column called the budget adjustment column. Those adjustments will only be done once the CMSBC approves them.
Okay.
And the budgets that you see listed for owner's representative and the architect are the actual contract values. So those are good numbers to go with. And so that's up here, the $2,257,000. And our owner's rep number at 631,062. Any questions on the middle school budget?
The only question so last meeting we talked about understanding what the specific budgets were going to be for the commissioning agent and the construction manager.
So for the commissioning agent, you will see commissioning, we have a targeted budget of 125,000. That is based on our experiences with other projects. With regards to the construction manager, we do have a pre-con amount for $200,000. Your question last week dove more into breaking out what would be the
Material and
pre-con,
labor.
the general conditions and staffing. And due to the fact that this is still an open competition, I would like to share that with you as you go into executive session.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And Jack and I did discuss that earlier today.
Okay, good.
I had figured that that's what would be asked again today, so
Yep.
we did take that into consideration. Any other questions on this side?
One quick question about as we move forward with our communications tools, and before we were invoicing those through the town, but I'm thinking now that probably has to be invoiced through the project. Is that correct?
Yeah, and further down in the presentation, I do have to review the steps, and I did take into consideration, I reviewed it again, adding and making sure that everything was reviewed by Arcadis, recommended, and before coming into this committee. So I will lay that out for you in the next couple of steps.
Okay.
Because the invoices from our discussions with Sharon and have been that it gets approved here. Once we receive the meeting minutes, then it continues on to getting paid.
Okay. So we would first send that invoice to you to. Okay.
Yes, exactly. Any more questions on this slide?
Okay. I was gonna say, is the next slide the central office?
Yes.
Is it- I know there's like the two budgets for
Yeah.
state grant approval and all that. Is there a reason or preference for us to, I guess on a running basis, right, we'll get updates on where we are to budget and encumbrances. Is there a reason to see them split out, or should we?
I think so. I think it'll be good to know.
Yeah, and if you would like to see just a summary, we can always just provide this top box. Once, if you would rather see both, which shows you a detailed of everything, which make up the project budget, we would set it up as you would like.
Yeah, I was just thinking of it like for the Board of Finance, I'll probably quote, "Oh, this is where we're at relative to budget." I'm just gonna look in the aggregate.
Yeah.
So you would benefit more from just this box right here.
Yeah, I suppose.
Yep.
But, okay.
So the project budget for the central administration or the Board of Ed offices are just the same as the last slide. This is based on what was approved at our October 19th meeting. This signifies this is our original budget as approved by the CMSBC. As you will see, this has also been shared with town finance. Moving forward, again, you'll see another column that shows any adjustments, but that's only done once it's approved by you as a committee. Again, the owner's rep and the architect are actual contract values. For the central administration office, we have commissioning a budget of $5,000. And for pre-con for central offices, $10,000. And again, we can dive into this smaller percentage here. Any questions on this slide? Okay. So next up is what we provided last meeting was to process invoices. We have prepared a payment request form based off what the town currently uses, which just lists our purchase order, if we're doing a final payment or a partial payment, lists the vendor information. When the CMSBC approved this, that's the important date. And I will complete these rows and sign that I prepared it and request that Rosanna signs off on this once it's approved. So we will gather all invoices, review and recommend for payment. I will prepare the invoice package, which will include all of these disbursements forms for each invoice and send it over to Lisa for as part of the agenda item. Once we meet, you'll review and approve or make further changes if you so desire. If that's the case, if everything goes through fine, then Rosanna signs as department head. The approved invoices will be taken then by us, and once we get the minutes, then we will submit to town finance. And finance, Sharon has advised me that checks are issued weekly by the town, so there really won't be a delay in payment. So this would be the process for submitting and approving invoices. We would gather all invoices first. Questions?
So just a point of clarification, I think it would be helpful if for each step, it starts with like who's taking the action. So I would just look at like step B. It sounds like that would be Arcadis, but I think it'd just be helpful to write that in there. So
Okay.
in a few months when we look back at this and we forget, we remember. And then kind of same thing on E, like the approved signed invoices will return to Arcadis, like Rosanna's returning those, the building committee
Okay.
is returning those. I think that would just help clean
So
it up
I
a
could
little
just
bit.
say the chair.
Yeah, whoever it is.
Just know who owns the action for each of those steps. That's
Yeah,
pretty much-
so we just don't, like, if, we just don't want to miss it because we didn't know who the owner was for
Yep.
this stuff.
I could make that change. And for the requisition processing, again, it's basically the same steps. We have to gather all backup for all requisitions, review and recommend for the purchase orders. For example, for your commissioning agent, once the CMSBC approves, there's a contract signed, we will take all of that and put into a package and provide it to you to request a purchase order be issued. Just want to make sure that audit-wise, everything is also there. Whether the auditors look for a bid summary, they look for making sure that all the quals are available. So at the same time that we're preparing a requisition processing for a PO to be issued, we just need to make sure that for audit purposes, everything's all set. And we will prepare the package, just like an invoice, prepare the package, send it over to Lisa as part of an agenda item. We will also have you guys review and approve, answer any questions as to why, if it's something that comes up and you have not been brought aware of that. The chair to sign the PO requisition form. These will be returned to us by the chair. And again, the minutes will always drive most of these approvals. We need to make sure that the minutes match what has been approved. And there is also a box up here for when the CMSBC approved it. Again, it's just to make sure that when the auditors come in and they look for 11/2/22, do you approve the commissioning agent, that this form supports it and that the amount that's listed here also supports the minutes. I've had clients before we came on board where the minutes would say one amount and the actual contract would say another. So we would have to go back and say, we need you to revise this approval to match the record. And then once everything is complete, we will send that package again to town finance and make sure that, where they will make sure that all the purchasing guidelines were followed and a PO will be issued after that. Any questions?
My same comment applies.
Yep.
I
Yes.
think as we move forward.
For PO increases in processing, this is kind of a two-way for two different things. Change orders, once the construction manager starts, will also have to go through you, but they'll be made up of different PCOs. There'll be amendments that might happen, and there could be some increases to quotes. You can just hire a direct buy of a service, and you might just want to increase that for an additional service. So when it comes to change orders and amendments, those are based on AIA documents and must be signed by the town manager. Those can't be processed until the town manager signs off on them, since he is the signing authority in the contract.
What is AIA?
The AIA is the format document to create contracts. I don't know what you're using.
Like, does it stand for something?
American Institution Architects, yes. So short for AIA documents. It's something that's used quite often, and it's also, they have documents for change orders, for amendments, for GMPs. So it's a very thorough document.
So that's, so it, so what you're saying is that are those different than the change orders, amendments, and quotes that are referenced above in
So these are
section A?
These are the same, and I will add in here AIA change orders and AIA amendments.
Okay.
So I will add that in there. The only difference would be when it's quotes. The quotes, you're not going to see an actual contract document. You're not going to see an actual legal AIA document. It could just be like a regular quote saying these are for my additional services, and that's a simpler document.
Okay.
But again, all of these have to be reviewed by us, and we'll prepare again another package, send it to Lisa for an agenda item. Also review with you, especially when it comes to the change orders. Once the construction management starts, it's on board and work starts, and there are some change orders. We'll make sure to review all of those PCOs.
Are change orders like a surprise thing? Like, oh, by the way, there's an increase, or is it like, okay, well, we're changing scope or we're changing direction, therefore it's driving a...
It could be a bit of both, because sometimes you don't. What I've happened to find is you don't. So when they walk the building, there's some parts in there that are hidden, so you don't know. In one of my recent projects, we just met with a subcommittee that reviews the PCOs before they come to the whole building committee. So we review them together, and they approve yes or no. It was nobody had foreseen when they knocked down a wall, there was windows hidden behind that wall. So the question came in as there's costs, to either do we take down the walls or do we just cover them back up and put in some book that says, hey, if you're going to come do something against this wall, there are windows behind that wall. So they took the lesser cost, which was just to cover it back up, just make sure that it's sealed. So it could be surprises. We don't know, because you don't know until you start demoing a building. Yeah. That could happen. But again, all of these are driven by the issuance of the minutes, and all of that. Once with the whole package is complete, then I will send that over to Sharon, which will review, enter to Munis, and the PO is increased. And as you can see, this form, we actually created this form from scratch, just to make sure that everything is accounted for, because it's important to have like a cover, and I find it easier even for the auditors if they have something that shows them this is what I'm going to be looking at, because then it's easier for them to just like see a date here and just go to that meeting date and say, oh, this amount matches what they're talking about. So any questions on this form?
So then how does the change order, I guess letter D, how does that get to the town manager, and then how does it get back to wherever it needs to go?
These will be made up by the construction manager once you approve them. So
is the construction manager responsible to deliver them to the town manager for signature?
Yes. Okay. Unless you direct us to do otherwise. Because we could have our PM set up meetings and have them signed, or meet with Sharon and have her deliver them. It would be up to you to let us know how would you like to handle that.
Did the finance department indicate how they would like to have that?
We did share this with Sharon, and nothing really came back as to how the delivery would be, but it's something that we can arrange with her once the AIA document is signed off by the architect and the construction manager.
Sharon, what was, yeah.
I just want to make sure that it gets to
that. Yeah, what's your preference, Sharon?
Yeah, exactly.
So I would prefer it came to me, and I can make sure it gets signed by the town manager.
Okay.
So the construction manager would deliver it to the finance office.
Yep.
Yes. Emily, can it be an email? Does it have to be a physical document?
It has to be a physical document, unfortunately.
Okay, that's what I was questioning.
So it can't be emailed and printed out?
That can be too, but however, we need the architect to sign, and we also need the construction manager to sign.
Okay.
So it's actually 3 signatures for a change order to be.
Oh, they don't take digital signatures?
Not yet.
So then, I think mine are different. My letters. So D. So then E, that would be
once the town manager
Sharon.
signs.
Once the town manager signs, it would be the finance.
So I guess I would add in here that this gets delivered to Sharon, which will get the town manager to sign.
Yep.
So I'll modify D to add that sentence in there.
Yep, and then modify E.
Yep.
To say that the finance department
will return
it back to Arcadis.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you, Sharon.
Any other questions?
You're welcome.
In this
I just want to make sure it's clear. You don't want these things to get lost.
That's good.
No, I'd like to know what my role is in all this too. So.
So next up is actually just 3 boxes, and I figure I'll put them together. State progress payment request processing, which is the biggest thing because this is when the town gets their monies. So progress payment requests will be filed every other month. I will be preparing the form and gathering all the backup. In the backup, it's going to entail gathering all invoices approved, not necessarily paid, because let's say that you've approved invoices through November 30th, and I could file the next day knowing that you've already approved them. So they will get paid. So that batch doesn't sit for an extra month. Either the superintendent or myself will enter into court. That's still up to be determined. If the superintendent just wants to see what will be entered, saved, and then she can hit the submit button, that's fine. On behalf of my client in Brookfield, I just do that. Just share what's going to be entered and then do the entry, so that Michelle, when she's reviewing these packages, it's just a phone call away in order to make sure that it's paid. And I will be sending the projected payment to town, to Sharon in this case, with the payment request and all the backup for their files. To note is that we are anticipating that our first submittal will occur on July 2023 for both projects, which means that all expenses through June 30th, 2023 will be on this first payment request.
I have a side question on that.
Sure.
Do expenses go back pre-referendum?
The pre-referendum expenses are ineligible for reimbursement.
Ineligible. Okay. I just want to confirm that.
And then any expenses moving forward that are considered ineligible, you will be advised once we put that invoice package to let you know. Or any services that you would like to get, we will let you know that will be ineligible for reimbursement too. 5% retainage is held in each payment. So your reimbursement rate less 5%, you will get the difference on that. And the state will only pay up to 85% of total project costs. So once you reach that, they are no longer going to be accepting your reimbursements. They'll say, finish the project, close it out, and we'll pay you for that last 15%. So all of these will be accounted for in our cash flow projections so that the town finance knows how it will be affected.
What does the state consider project being closed?
When you issue the final check. You've paid the final person and you no longer owe anybody.
Okay.
So if you're saying that you'll end up in 55 million and you've underspent it, that's fine. But as long as there's no more outstanding invoices out there.
Well, like for instance, the Beeman project is not closed out yet, right?
Well, they're not cutting. Well, you're.
I don't think they received. They made the final payment yet.
Is there like a formal like disbanding of the building committee as another sign, like if that would close it out?
Yeah, the building committee's still in effect though.
Right, I'm saying would another sign that the project is closed be then you dissolve the building committee, I guess.
Well, once the building committee accepts a project as closed, then they can disband.
Okay, yeah, right.
Yeah.
You're on it forever.
You will have to meet once we all even issue the final check, I will come to you as a committee and let you know the final tally of costs, where you stand with ineligibles and eligibles, and ask that you accept the project as complete. At the same time, we have to go to the Board of Education and ask them to accept the project as complete. Once those meetings are held, then they have a year to submit all paperwork. And then, of course, the state, they take their time to give you an audit, but at least everything is approved for, and you can disband all the committees. So, state change orders are the next big thing.
Sorry, I have a few questions on this process.
Yep.
So, on letter A, where it says progress payment request will be filed every other month, who is that by, or is that what we're still need to determine?
That's what we still need to determine.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then who has the action to make that determination?
Well, the superintendent has that to determine, because she is the.
Talking to her? I'm going to talk to her tomorrow and see if she wants to do it.
She's since she entered the grant, she's the one. And again, I'm more than happy to just do that. Share with her, with Rosanna, and with Sharon the payment request, what will be entered, the backup, the projected payment.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that that conversation was about to happen and we don't leave it open for another couple weeks.
And because it's not till July 2023, but it'd be good to know from now this is what's going to happen. This is our current projection. So,
and then how is the payment received?
The state sends a wire directly to the treasurer. So if we submit in July 2023, you'll get a payment on August of 2023. And then you'll file again in September for costs through August. And we try to maintain that schedule as close as possible, but at the same time, we look at expenses. So if you don't want to submit a payment request for a reimbursement of $100,000 when you can just wait a month and submit a payment request for $1.5 million. So that plays a role as to when we will schedule these things. But everything will start to look better once we kick off that final submittal. And if you recall Perkins Eastman's schedule a few minutes ago, the approvals for phases are going to be happening in June, July. So this actual projection falls right within it. Any other questions on this one?
I thought I had heard the state was holding a higher percentage of retainage.
It was. They were holding 11%, but as of May of 2022, they went back to 5%. Any other ones? State change order processing, which is where we will work in coordination with the construction manager, and we will make sure to remind them that 6 months within a PCO being approved, it is the start of the clock to submit to the state. So a change order is approved by you. That change order becomes an AIA document, which is signed by the town manager. That then becomes the construction manager's job to prepare the state change order. We will review the complete package for backup and accuracy. And also what I like to see is also flag down the dates to make sure that we're within 6 months. If we agree, we will recommend for signature by the superintendent and the finance director.
And that's the town finance director?
Yes. And Arcadis will then, once all signatures are received, will mail and email signed forms and backup to OSCGR.
That could be the direct. So that could be Sharon, though, right? Doesn't have to be the finance director.
It could be
Either
Sharon.
One. It could
Yep.
be Sharon.
Yeah.
So are you overseeing that timeline
Yes.
to make sure that the construction
Yes.
manager? Okay.
Yeah. What we recommend, and we found to be very beneficial, is that one change order is approved, one state change order gets done. They're done like right back to back. So as soon as it's approved, you just don't waste time and you submit it, and let's get these balls rolling. And when reviewing the PCOs, we also pay attention to the dates. So once you tell them, yes, it's a go ahead, then let's say if you tell them today to go ahead, then December, January, February, March, April. By latest May 2nd, it has to be in the office of OSCGR and in their inbox. So we have to be very careful on that, those ends too. Any other questions on state change orders?
I would just make sure we add the language about it going to finance department to get the town manager's signature.
For the AIA change order, yes. And finally, the reports and cash flows. So I have already started with the first one for requesting a munis report as of today for costs through October 31st, which did not change since the last report that I received 2 weeks ago to create the budget. So that's good. Nobody has been paid. I have created a financial report based on those munis reports, which is what you saw 2 weeks ago. Since there are no changes, it's exactly the same. We will begin to provide monthly project updates to reflect approved costs and any changes, and of course the payments that are approved by the CMSBC. Cash flows will begin. I have started this based on the architect, our costs. Next will be the commissioning agent. Next will be construction manager, and I'll begin to populate the other lines, which will all be estimates. But once billing starts, and once we get further ahead, they'll become actual costs. And they get revised every other month as well. And I will also send that over to Sharon to make sure that she is aware as to where we are looking at things. If you would like a copy of those cash flows, those could always be made available to you. They will include projected reimbursements from the states. And again, just like I said, they will be updated monthly and shared with town finance.
Yes, I think I would like copies of that, or we would like copies of that as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
To be distributed at these meetings, or
Yeah,
okay.
once a month, whenever you give it to the finance department.
Okay.
Just a copy of it.
Yep, no problem. And that is it for me.
Thank you, Emily. That was Very well prepared, thank you.
Thank you.
We did have something on our agenda to approve the processes, but it felt like there was a lot more on there than what has been presented last week. And I think there's some changes we wanted to make with just,
I basically took the Word document, made revisions based on what Shannon had mentioned last time, and just put them into the boxes for slides. But I will make the recommendations that you've mentioned today and resubmit that. There's still no invoices to approve yet, so we're still good.
so we're good to approve the process next meeting then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So is everyone okay with tabling the action to approve till next meeting? Okay. All right. New business. So we had some reviews. We just had one visit this time? Just one. You guys are welcome to stay for that discussion. I know it's getting late. We're just going to talk about, what school did we visit? Branford.
Francis T. Walsh Intermediate School.
Okay. Yes, sticker? No. Emily is. Okay, so who attended and what would you like to enlighten us with? Because I wasn't there.
Yeah, so I can kick it off. So John, Heather, and I attended. Miss Cochiola was with us as well. Kind of my initial thoughts was that, so they also were a Board of Education and middle school building. They were renovated as new. It was 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and it was approximately 800 students, 900 students. Do you
It
remember?
was 944.
Okay.
It was built for 944
944.
based on ed specs, but they
Right.
currently only have 900.
We spent a lot of time with the principal. They spent a good 2 hours. I think we were there. We had a really good, thorough tour. The principal was very happy with the layout of the building. They thought it was really functional. Some of my observations were they seemed to have like really good, sturdy material choices. Some of the materials, I know Heather will get into this, that they talked about in the teacher workshop seemed to be the ones chosen in this building. They did make some short-term budget decisions that had long-term budget implications, and things like they didn't have like a wainscoting on their walls. It was just like white paint, and they've already had to repaint it in just a few years. And we saw it was still,
It takes
you know,
about a
there's
month.
it's kids, right?
It takes about
Colchester
a month.
had that, right? Didn't Colchester warn us about something
Yeah,
with
and
the
the gym.
backpacks
Yeah.
rubbing
Yeah.
up the
Yeah,
And
walls?
they had to
overlay
repaint
panels.
like the
Yeah,
whole
they
academic,
ended up
After-
later.
After
Yeah,
the fact,
okay.
yeah.
and it's trashed again.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Doesn't take long.
So why didn't they put that thing on instead?
Budget.
Yeah, it was a budget decision.
Oh, jeez.
They also had those breakout spaces. They said the principal said that she found that they worked well, but they lined them up to like a particular teacher because really only one teacher had eyes on it. That one teacher they thought would use it, and she said that paras would sometimes use it to take their students into those spaces. The other thing I noted, there's a lot more, so I'll let everyone else talk. But they went with the option of all modular furniture, so they had no storage or shelving or cabinetry in the classrooms, not the science classroom or the robotics or anything like that. But in your kind of like math, English classrooms, it was all modular, so nothing was attached to walls.
No cabinets, no shelving or anything?
They
There
had
was
cabinets.
but they were rolling
But they're
cabinets where you
all-
could move them. They
it
weren't.
was
They
all, like,
weren't fixed to the
furniture.
walls.
It wasn't fixed.
Like
It was
shop,
furniture.
like shop cabinets type
Yeah,
of thing?
like a cabinet that had casters on it where you could move it around,
Hmm.
which is, I thought was good because as classrooms evolve, you can move things around.
So
too,
you kind of had like a blank space that you could always evolve.
Is that
So-
more cost effective,
something-
having the modular type of furniture as opposed
Comes
to
into the
carpented?
FF&E then.
Built-in? Built-in furniture?
I believe it could be.
Would
more
that be
cost
considered
effective.
FF&E
It would
instead
be
of?
FF&E, yeah.
Yeah.
You're be transferring the cost from
yeah.
construction into FF&E.
Yeah.
You're gonna pay for it one way or the other, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe it's more cost effective.
Yeah, I mean, the principal mentioned
They
that
liked
they used, like, they had professional development days to, like, help coach the teachers of parting with some of their materials because their storage space would be limited and coaching through that process.
But they did have success.
Yes, they
They
did.
had a lot of
Yeah.
success, and they liked
liked
that
it.
there's no, like the counter eats up a lot of room, like
Oh,
a
yeah.
lot of room. So just being able to have that double doored, like almost armoire style, just kind of in the back in a corner, didn't eat away from everything.
What do you
Was it
think,
all
Blaise?
taller cabinets versus?
Yeah.
Like a
Yeah, it's like a 7-foot cabinet, yeah.
What do you think, Blaise?
It was kind of like a mixture, though. Like some of they had some shelves too that were like a little bit lower.
Right, a little bit
so-
of both.
Yeah.
Well, as we move away from, print, there's a lot less need for some of that stuff. But you will need some of those counseling sessions because, when I moved into my classroom, there were books about someday there will be the wonders of jet travel and someday man will walk on the moon. So people keep stuff for a long time, and they don't want to get rid of it. So, true story.
And I know you're not exaggerating.
No, and then I didn't get to go, but the desks themselves were also modular in that they could move into various formations. Were they on casters?
The desks were, the chairs were not.
Because that's my own. I don't know. I've never had that, but does that mean they start flying around the room?
No, they're locked
They
in
lock.
place.
The desks had 2 legs were just
Okay.
legs, and 2 legs were locking casters where you could pick it up and move it around.
Okay, but the kids don't unlock it and then start playing bumper pool.
No, but the chairs were C-shaped chairs. They didn't have wheels on them like at Beeman.
Okay,
They love
all right.
those chairs. I like those chairs too. They were
Yeah, those chairs are
Just
really
pick them up
nice.
just to see, and you put it right on top of the desk.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
stack
okay.
nice.
That was nice.
What were their feet like?
Just
So
a
it
just a
came-
neoprene bottom.
They slide well?
Yeah,
They
yeah.
didn't like scratch or mar the
No,
mar the
no,
floor?
that's what we have to look at.
But
closely is
flexibility, I would love
combination.
flexibility because teachers use it different ways and even on different days, depending on what you're doing. That flexibility would be very beneficial.
Another thing the superintendent pointed out was that when they designed the building, they looked at the academic part of it, and then afterwards they just threw central office together, and they didn't like the way that central office was laid out. They said there's a lot of wasted space in there, which I don't foresee us having that problem, but that's just one thing that we saw in Branford, where that whole central office was just kind of sprawled out and a lot of
When you
wasted
say
space in
central
there.
office, you mean like the BOE like we have, or do you mean like the admin
Yeah,
area?
BO, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Just one thing I wanted to point out when we were just mentioning that it would be cost effective about the mobility. Once you look at FF&E, it would be an eligibility factor. Always CGR kind of looks at it like if it's on wheels, it can walk away and they could see it somewhere. Yeah. So that's something you would have to look at because they don't want, their thinking is if I'm buying it for this school and if it's in a mobile way, what guarantees it that it's not going to walk away, go somewhere else? So it's something that it should be good to look at, but at the same time, it would be something to talk to and kind of get an idea as to where OSCGR sees how much of it would they reimburse the town for.
Okay.
One of the things that was different from Beeman is that Beeman had their Promethean boards on like these big stands that were mobile and could kind of.
What kind of boards?
Promethean, the big TV.
Just the
smart
brand name.
board.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas Branford had like a roller system on the top and bottom of the whiteboard, so it could just slide back and forth.
On one wall, yeah.
So you're still limited and you can't really angle it, but you aren't taking up all that floor space with that huge, massive. It was the footprint of it. It was just huge
Yeah,
at
it
Beeman.
took up a lot of room.
So just
I like that.
food for thought. I don't not work. I don't know. Just food for thought.
I will say though, if it's on one wall though, you get that whole thing that's on one wall. If they decide to turn the classroom 90 degrees, you have a problem because now obviously the board's on the
Right.
side of the classroom, so you got to be careful there too.
Yeah.
The one thing I remember, and I forget the gentleman's name, the facilities coordinator.
Oh, yeah, I forget to.
John, maybe, I don't know. They have a lot of, like the office has keypad locks, and I think he regrets that. He wish everything was just fobbed.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's, to have to punch it in, and it's bulky on the door, and, They were not a fan of that.
He wasn't a fan of technology, period.
Yeah, he was very against the computerized lights.
Yeah.
Yes.
He was very
Which-
anti that because when power goes out, the whole system goes out, and it takes a while to come back on, and it just creates. Yeah, like you can't get lights on because the computer's resetting. So just again, food for thought.
Yeah, there weren't light switches.
No, it's all computerized. You can't just walk in and turn on a light.
Like, it was all censored, like motion censored and everything?
I'm not sure how exactly they were censored, but there's no switches.
There's just a button you push and it just dims up.
Yeah, but some of the rooms didn't have
Some
buttons.
didn't have any.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Some had
Yeah.
just a button and it just dimmed up.
Yeah, some
So it was
just
all
didn't
over the
have
place.
anything.
It was kind of different everywhere. A lot of
The
different
lighting
stuff
was
going on.
beautiful. Their
Yeah.
lighting choices were beautiful.
The
Yes, their
indirect lighting
hallway
was
lighting
nice.
was really nice.
It was so nice.
Like it was staged like this, I guess is the word
drop
for it.
ceiling?
Almost in the middle against the wall. So then they had lighting like along
like
that
recessed.
like recessed lighting on the ends of the hallway,
Recessed
and
it
then
from the sides.
in the middle of the hallway, there were these big round lights that were flush.
Like
So it
up
wasn't-
lights instead of down lights?
Indirect.
Like indirect lights?
Did
Do
it
you have
point
the,
up?
do you have the pictures on your
Oh,
phone
yeah,
still?
yeah, yeah.
It
I'll
was
put
just
the pictures in the Google Drive.
it was nice to not just have like
Indirect.
fluorescent light. Like it didn't feel like that.
Yeah, it felt more natural.
Yes, it felt way more natural in the interior hallways where you don't have.
Is there such
natural
thing as a
light.
lighting engineer? Like who? Lighting designer.
There are lighting designers, yes. Yeah, we typically design the lights ourselves.
You have your
so-
own lighting designers?
Yeah.
Are you the lighting designer?
We are.
Oh, you guys are. Oh, there you go. Okay.
No, we have our engineers, we have lighting, reps that, try to get us to use their lighting. So, sorry about that. So yeah, we're very aware of the fixture you're talking about. A direct recessed kind of shaped round
Yeah,
light.
they were just they were much more
Yeah.
pleasant to look at than just walking through like a typical
Yes.
this.
Yeah, and everything's LED, so
How
super
hard is it to
efficient,
replace
good
those
quality of
bulbs?
light.
That's
Yeah.
what I was just gonna say. It's all LED now.
Yep.
We asked that.
Spec
They
the
said it made
LEDs
us
to
just
have
vinyl
a
light.
incandescent
Vinyl light,
feel
yeah.
versus a fluorescent feel. The
Yep.
color temperature.
Yeah.
And the only other thing I noticed was that in the faculty room they made use of the wall space by putting like bar height with stools, so that you could add more seating.
Interesting.
Like if you wanted to go in and do something but not sit at the table because you had to kind of do something private, you had a little bit of space where you weren't surrounded by 6 other people to.
I think for that faculty dining area, there needs to be like a bigger table to put food on when they have events and stuff.
Yeah, oh yeah, they had their regular tables and stuff in the middle,
It was
but
a
they
big
then
faculty or
yeah,
dining area, huge.
Yeah,
Huge. It was.
we
yeah.
told Ann not
They
to
had
get
a
any
copy.
ideas.
They had a copy.
There were several. Of
There was a
them, too.
copy. There was like a teacher's workroom.
Yeah, it was like
in
a
there,
teacher
too,
workroom in
which
there as
Ann
well,
didn't
which
like either.
she didn't like.
No, I don't. I agree with that. I don't.
But they did have the big tables, but in addition, they utilized the perimeter space with like just a bar height counter with some stools.
They had a small conference room in there too, which they said worked well. Like if teachers had to make private phone calls to parents, and they they had smaller meetings. They thought that it was right in kind of that. I mean, I guess it wasn't
Like a suite.
Their dining was also, it was like dining and workspace combined. I know there's pros and cons to that, but this little teacher conference room with maybe 4 chairs, they found they got a lot of use out of our private space. They had some cool floor kind of wayfinding things, like there were certain floor markers where there were bathrooms, there was floor markers where hallways intersected. I mean, I know those aren't decisions we're making for a long time, but
But was there a technology center?
No.
Nothing.
they had just kind of separate, spread
Just
out
classrooms.
classrooms.
Yeah.
See, I like how this puts all the STEM stuff together because I think we could make a nice, fancy little
Innovation Lab.
innovation. That's what I'm talking about. Innovation
Yeah.
lab. Thank you.
We were inspired by the one at Beaman. That one was,
Oh,
was
yeah.
really nice. But if we could, what do you call it when you shave off a little bit of square footage here and there and get that room as big as we possibly can, so we can I forget what you call that.
Value engineering?
Is that what it is?
The other, at the very end, the facilities gentleman, when they bought a generator that supports the whole school, but then they chose not to connect the whole school to said generator. So they have an oversized generator that they now
Can't really use to.
right, and it's like too late to go back and
How does that happen?
he's not sure. So like they
How
can't,
does that happen? How does that happen?
Yeah, you order your you have to order your generator super early, right? So it probably has a long lead time, and then by the time it came in, you had to make decisions about wiring the school and.
Just how does electronics? I don't even know how that would work. That you
Should
couldn't-
sell it.
Like it seems like
You'd
such
have
a
to have
waste.
separate electronic systems in your. Oh, I don't know.
It's not ever source.
Okay. Awesome. Anyone else have any?
We
anything
liked
else to
in the
add?
foyer those very large ceramic tiles.
Yeah, they
were
with
really
an 18
nice.
by 36.
It was 18 by
Yeah,
36.
some really nice material choices.
Yeah, just that foyer, just as you walk in, it was really nice. It was made for a smooth floor, not too bumpy for carts or anything like that,
was
and
really
also very maintainable. So that was really nice.
Their auditorium is beautiful. I was like, blown
Yeah,
away.
auditorium
Yeah.
The one you sent the
beautiful.
picture of?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It was so beautiful.
We can't wait
That
for
looked
ours.
like Broadway theater.
It was so nice.
What the auditorium held, what was it, half the student body?
Not
Yeah.
quite half.
Just under half.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So.
Okay. Anything
It
else?
was a good tour.
All right. Communications subcommittee report.
Not too much to update. We just keep moving along with our monthly newsletter process and our regular social media postings, and just trying to encourage folks to, send us comments when they have them.
Thank you. Design subcommittee.
So we haven't really been active as a subcommittee yet, but on Thursday, October 20th, I participated with Perkins Eastman in an all-day workshop with CMS staff to better understand the educational specifications and the needs of the teachers and staff. So 20-minute sessions were held with teachers in the following educational spaces. We had robotics, coding and student news, PE, the library media center, band and chorus, special education, a paraprofessional, world language, science, and a regular education, which happened to be social studies. We also held sessions with the head custodian, the food service director, student support services, and front office staff. While there will definitely need to be additional workshops and meetings with the teachers and staff, this first pass at hearing and understanding how staff uses their current space, how they would like to use their new spaces, what they would like to see in their spaces as far as furniture and equipment, and their adjacency needs will all be used as Perkins Eastman continues their work on the layout and design of the new CMS. My notes from these workshops, this workshop was shared with the other design subcommittee members, along with any reference documents that teachers and staff brought to their session, and I will share that folder is in the Google Drive that anyone on the committee can access.
And the nurse was the only one we didn't.
She was the only one. She was unavailable. She was with a student.
Okay.
But everyone else was able to be there. It was
Awesome.
It was really good. It was long. It was really, really long. But
It was really good information.
Yeah.
And Mike's already started incorporating some of those adjacencies into the diagram.
Okay, good. Any surprises or any oh, we didn't think of that.
There were. I'd have to go back to my notes. I feel like it was 17 weeks ago at this point.
Yeah. That's okay.
But there was a lot of good
learning,
good discussion and
Good.
learning,
Good.
and
Awesome.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
No more public comments. There's no one here. All right, so we're going to go into executive session. I think, Emily, you're going to stay for that? Okay. I don't think we need Perkins Eastman for it, unless... Do we need Perkins Eastman for that?
I don't think so.
No, unless you want to be part of it, but I don't think you need to be here for that. I think you'd rather go home. It's 9 o'clock.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
So, why don't we take a 5-minute bio break? It's been here 2 hours. All right? Just
Please dial the area
Manager.
code and the telephone.
Managers, oh gosh, I'm getting all confused. Shortlist, thank you.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Okay, we're in executive session. whenever we get back on that.
Oh, we're talking about all the different fees. This won't be specific.
They'll give you a percentage as well on bond and insurance.
Okay, so that's an additional quoted item. Okay. All right.
All right, so we're back in public session. We have two votes we need to do. One is to approve the short list as discussed during executive session, and the second one is to authorize the selection subcommittee in determining what the RFP verbiage is going to be for the construction managers shortlist. So, I'll take a motion for approving the construction management shortlist as discussed during executive session.
So moved.
Is there a second? Okay, thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Anyone abstaining? Motion passes. And I will take a motion for the allowing the selection committee, the construction management selection committee from determining the content in the RFPs for the shortlist for the construction management.
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ken. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Did everyone vote? All opposed say nay.
Nay.
Okay. Anyone abstaining? Okay. Motion passes. I think that's it on the agenda. Gosh. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
You forgot comments, updates, and announcements from
Oh,
board members
any-
and administrators.
Oh my God. Any comments? Anything? Anyone? No? Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
A second.
Second.
All in favor say aye.